All right. We can, De Morgan's law, we use it to simplify complicated Boolean expressions. And it says if you have not A and B, this becomes not A or not B. So I'll let you write that down and then we'll talk about it. It's kind of like the distributive property. Well put. I think of it as the distributive property. Oh, so you learned this in 2A. The exclamation point, the not symbol, goes to each item in here. So it goes to the A, becomes not A. Goes to the and. What's the opposite of and? In this case, or. And then it also goes to the B. So it's like a distributive property for logic. And the other version is if you have a not symbol and you have A or B, this becomes not A and not B. So it's the same thing, just going the other way. So some people say it's De Morgan's laws, like there's more than one, but I think we're just going to talk about it like there's one. We'll do an example. Not num2 modulo 2 equals 1 and not num2, sorry, just num, and num modulo 3 equals 0. So this expression, you could put that inside of an if, the parentheses of an if statement. This would be the same as num modulo 2 not equal 1 or num modulo 3 not equal 0. I'll do another example. Not A equals 7 or B equals 9 becomes A not equal to 7 and B not equal to 9. So these examples, it became simpler. I wouldn't say it always becomes simpler, but those are just two basic examples. And then I've got a couple more little twists here. So just to summarize, double equals, this becomes that, I'm going to say. So double equals becomes not equals, and not equals becomes double equals, and then greater than, what do you think greater than becomes? Anyone? Not just less than, it's less than or equal to it, because it has to be exclusive. Whoa, look what it did. Less than becomes greater than or equal to. I'm going to put this all on the next page so I don't have to worry about it bouncing around. And similar thing, if you go greater than or equal to, that becomes less than, and less than or equal to becomes greater than. You don't have to memorize these things, but I did want to just call it out. Like, you know, you'd say, what's the opposite of greater than? You'd say, well, less than. But if we're trying to be a complete universe where it's either one thing or the other thing without like a thing in between, then we have to have the opposite of greater than be less than or equal to. Because it's kind of like everything else. It's either greater than or what's left. It's what's less than or equal to. So I'm not saying you need to memorize that's what goes on, but you don't have to like flashcard this particular thing. I mean, if you think about it, if the original statement was less than or equal to, well, what's not less than or equal to? Well, everything that's greater than. I will also say you don't put the not so if we had not A greater than B and C not equal to 12, this becomes, why don't you try it in your notes? See if you get it right. So this will become A less than or equal to B, or C is equal to 12. So you don't put a not symbol in front of the A if they're like integers. You can if it's a Boolean variable. So if you're using a Boolean variable or expression, you do put the not on the variable. So here's an example. Boolean is hot equals true. Boolean is windy equals true. And if is hot and not is windy. Some stuff. Whoop. I got a, instead of an if, I actually have just this. So see, what's different here is we're using Boolean variables, not like integer a equals 5 or 0 or something. So here, you do just put the not symbol right in front of the variable. So not is hot or is windy. So see, the is windy had a not already, and so it goes away. And the is hot didn't have one, so it has one. And the and became an or. Question? So here's another thing. If you were writing an if statement and you wanted to make sure two things were not the same, you could do not name one dot equals name 2. This isn't De Morgan's law anymore, but I'm just showing you the not symbol in front of a Boolean expression, because the dot equals command returns either true or false, and so you can just have a not symbol in front. If you were writing an if statement, you want to make sure that this name wasn't the same as that name, then you could put a not symbol in front of a Boolean expression like dot equals. Okay, the last thing. Sometimes they get complicated. Do them one level at a time. So I'm going to show you kind of a nasty one. I didn't get too crazy. but it is, you know, could be a little scary. I'll put some spaces in here to make it easier to read. So, there's three Boolean expressions, but two are inside parentheses with an or, and then we've got this not out front. So my advice is don't try to just do this all in one swoop, because you can get really confused. Of course, if over time you find that you can do it that way, that's great, but everyone thinks in a different way. The way I think about this is I'm going to distribute this not to this, and I'm going to write it just in front of that. So my first step would be A less than or equal to B. So that's the not version of A greater than B. And then I'm going to put the or, and then I'm going to write not, and then I'm going to write the same thing without changing it, rather than trying to do it all at once. You know, if you get the answers right, doing them all at once, then you're a clear thinker, and that's great. But I'm recommending that you do it in stages. It's up to you. I mean, it's your performance. You know, be sure to check your answers if you're doing it all at once. I'm sure you could do it all at once if you can keep it all straight. So that doesn't change again, and we still have the or. And then now I'm going to apply the not to this other stuff. I think it's important to leave the parentheses there, though. So we're not getting rid of the parentheses, but this becomes A greater than or equal to C, and B not equal to C. And then we're done. Yeah. It is fascinating. I think the parentheses have to be there. I'm not a graduate level logician, but it seems like the and, now that that's an and especially, that should be evaluated before you try to do the or part of it. You can't just string them all together and work it out. So I recommend leaving the parentheses there. But if they're not needed, sometimes they're not needed. If it was a bunch of ors, you could just turn them all into ands. All right, that's it for the notes.